So now we wanted to have a kind of a guided conversation with you around, we're moving into the module now that's really looking about creating a sense of safety and security. And in many ways this could connect back to what we were talking about yesterday when we were looking at Maslow. And we were talking about the idea of a hierarchy of needs. And that sense of being safe is another really important part of that hierarchy. That when you get a sense of safety, you can start to consider, do I belong, how do I belong, what helps me to belong. And the internet is a really interesting space for all young people, but in a very particular way for autistic young people, because they can very quickly find their tribe. They get a sense of safety and a sense of belonging very quickly. But it's very important that we facilitate that process in a safe way, and that we don't limit it because of our own anxieties and fears around the internet and the amount of information that young people have access to, but we teach them to be digitally intelligent, to build their digital literacy skills, to build their capacity around managing, accessing, editing, screening, considering data and the amount of data and information that comes their way online. And as adults in their lives, it's an extraordinarily important part of our guiding force around helping them navigate this process. And in many ways, our duty of care is quite varied. With much younger children, we have to be so extraordinarily careful around their access to internet, how we use data protection tools, and there are great, Anna's going to talk about some examples she knows as well, around data management tools and information tools. There are brilliant supports out there available on a national level that as a facilitator or as a guide or a teacher working on a summer program, you can really spend time. But remember that you are only part of a journey here. The schools themselves have a responsibility around safe internet usage. SPHE wellbeing programs will also touch and involve these. We have acceptable usage policies in our schools that manage information and data. I know in my own school, all our students have their own devices. So every student in our school has a laptop. And as a result of that, managing access to internet, managing how students use it, but teaching them to use it in a meaningful and an appropriate way so that they are protected. And not only that they are protected, but that they learn to protect themselves in these situations. Because specifically when working with autistic young adults and young children, they can be really quickly exposed, and their ability to manage the amount of information comes at them can have a really negative impact on them. So social media, bullying, online content and communication, all of that is something that we need to kind of consider as well. So from your experience at that second level and with wellbeing and SPHE, are there any particular tools or websites or supports that you found particularly useful or helpful?
Yeah, I suppose one of the key things there, really, and you mentioned it as well, is that it is important that they have this skill. They're going to need it. So I mean, the whole concept of them not having access to it or not knowing how to use it that's not really a runner, I don't think, because you're actually they're going to be disadvantaged as they move throughout their lives. That's the technology, that's where the world is going. So I think them having that skill, is really, really important, but they need to know how to manage what they're getting, because they have access to so much, and pop-ups can be a huge thing actually, the ads that pop up for them, right? And the content of those can often be very sexualized for young, like teenagers, even between 10, 11-year-olds, and they have to be able to decipher, is that information that I should be having on my laptop or on my screen or whatever, or is it something that I need to tell a parent about or an adult, and it's actually giving them that knowledge, that you can't really stop it happening, because that's just the nature of the way the technology is, but it's actually them knowing that this isn't something that I should maybe have, what can I do about it? So I think, this is in school, but it also home, and parents all are, our guardians all have that role as well to play with regard to how much time that is spent online and what's the content that they're getting. And in the worksheet we have some activities that sometimes young people don't realise how long they spend on it, you know. But you can get an app where it can be linked up to, you know, their usage can be linked up to your phone as a parent, let's say, right? So you're able to see how much time they are spending on any particular platform. So for instance, be it YouTube, Xbox, PlayStation, whatever it is, you can actually see where their time is being spent, you know, and they don't often see the amount of time. So this activity is really good to focus that actually, because when they fill it out, they can see, oh God, I did actually spend that amount on screen, you know, and even the whole thing with their eyes even, you know, that's not very healthy for them as well, you know. I suppose in school then I would use Webwise. Webwise have amazing resources, you know, for all age groups, and I'm sure Hannah in primary as well.
Yeah, it would be a staple website of primary, but I know you were saying that it's applicable to secondary as well. It's whether if they don't have the knowledge, that's where you start.
Yeah.
And it's not about age.
It's not, no, and I would use maybe some of the material that might be aimed at a younger age group, but I would use it with my senior students as well, you know, and it's so useful, and it gives a very, very sharp focus to the class as well, you know. But I think the misinformation is a huge issue actually. And how we need to give them the skill to know when, or to check something, to clarify it. Like how many sources are saying this. Right, and you know, to stop and don't, just because it appears on a website, you know, that doesn't mean that it's actually accurate. Where's the source of the information? Are you able to find it on another website? You know, and obviously teaching them as well that lots of like government websites or, you know, websites that are sponsored by them generally will have that accurate information, right? And then other stuff then can be opinions. And basically they need to be able to sift through that. So I suppose it's just, I think the misinformation is a huge thing actually for them at the moment.
Do you think, Hannah, at a primary level, where does it become more challenging? At what point do you feel that access to the internet and maybe digital freedom, does it become more challenging in the junior end, or as they move up towards the senior end?
I think definitely as they move towards the senior end, it does become more challenging, because that's when you start to see more and more of them having phones, and you know, really when a child has a phone, they have access to whatever information they need or they want or can possibly get in their pocket at all times. And sometimes people aren't fully aware of that. It is a mini laptop, you know, and sometimes that there can be kind of some confusion around that, or just not seeing it that is exactly what it is. And you know, children who are 8, 9, 10 years old, they're not really developed enough to be able to manage that amount of freedom. So you know, those apps that Anne was talking about you know, where parents can see what it is their child is doing, not having to take the phone off them and actually look at it, but that information coming through their own phone, seeing the messages that the child is sending and who they're contacting and what apps they're using and how long they're spending on those apps is really helpful. And not from a perspective of, you know, I'm watching you, and from a punitive kind of perspective. It's from I think it's really good for parents to have conversations with their children and young people, and you know, around those things, and learning about, you know, they will know all of the apps before you do. Everything new that comes out, like whether they're 6, 7, 8, they will know it before you know it. And I think it's nice when you kind of give them that credit and you ask them to tell you about it, because you're the person here that doesn't know what this app does, or what they use it for, or what they like about it, what they don't like about it. And I think that can create a sense of, not power, but you know, it can give the child a sense of confidence in that, well, I'm teaching the adult about this, and then, you know, then you're going to get more information out of them, because they're in a better place to be able to talk about it.
And I suppose it's important as well, I suppose, when you're looking at that young age group, you know, that you have the password for their phone. You know,
no
like,
reason why you shouldn't.
You know, you should have the password, you know, that you can actually check, and particularly around the whole area of social media. And you know, if there's any elements of bullying or you know, inappropriate content being shared, you know, that you have access to it, because just because they're, you know, 12, 13, 14, that doesn't mean that it wouldn't be shared, you know.
And I think it's important to make a differentiation as well with technology as an information tool and technology as a support tool. that for many of the young people who might be accessing our summer programs, I know certainly many of our students in our school would use technology as an accessibility tool. So let's say maybe if a student is using it as a verbal tool to help them communicate, if students are using it in a way that helps them access the curriculum. So for example, maybe if they're using it and they're using it as a reading tool, they're using immersive reader, they're using audio tools, audio playback tools. So it's very important that sometimes they need a second device, or they will need access to a second device, because for example, if a student is non-verbal and they're using it as a communication or as their voice, and then they want to access the internet, they can't limit their voice while they can't do both. So it's also important to consider in schools, like, you know, certainly in our context, we would have backup devices. So if a student was using it as their main communication device, they might have their laptop as well as a mini iPad, and the mini iPad is used as a communication tool.
It's really important for autistic young people, particularly when they have the device as their communication tool, to really preserve the authenticity of that. That is their voice. It is not for anything other than it being their communication tool and their voice.
Yeah, and I think as schools we will use them slightly differently, and it's important that we use them developmentally appropriate. Like I would look at our first years coming in now, and they will all have devices, and for many of them that's very exciting. They suddenly go, I'm not carrying a bag full of textbooks, we all have a new laptop, but also we have a responsibility as a school to teach them how to use that device in an appropriate and meaningful way. But no student get access, even though they buy that device, every single password on it is accessible by us as a school, because it's a school device. It's for school and it's for learning. So very quickly they learn this concept of my laptop is like my diary, and therefore a parent, you can't have access to it. Well, you know, buy them a diary, and I won't read your diary, but your device is much more than that. And understanding that this challenge for adults and carers around accessibility, privacy, it's about encouraging young people to use the device in an appropriate way. But it's, and I think Hannah, you're really right in that we need to not be punitive in the way we talk. I can't believe you were on that website. Don't assume that they went on that website consciously. They could have clicked a pop-up and suddenly that website was in their browser history. And it's about appropriate and developmentally appropriate conversations around the content that a young person is accessing or looking at.
I think as Anne mentioned about the pop-ups, and you were saying how, you know, they need to know whether, is that something I should have, or is that something I should talk to an adult about? Well, why would they go and talk to an adult about it if they felt I am going to get in trouble for that?
Exactly.
It's called a pop-up for a reason. You know, they didn't go out of their way to find it. It just appeared here. So they really shouldn't, if they're coming to tell you about it, that's a really, really good thing. And if there's any kind of negativity around that conversation, they won't come and tell you again. And that's really important to avoid.
And that's the danger of it, actually, when they won't tell you, or that you don't become aware of what is actually popping up or in their browser history, you know.
And it can make, I've seen some kids become very anxious around that, certainly in primary school, when things pop up or they misspell something in the Google search, and it happens. They misspell something in the Google search and then something comes up, and there's a real fluster and a real fear, and it comes from this place of, oh, I'm going to get in so much trouble for accidentally coming upon this. You know, it can make kids really, really anxious. I've had kids in the classroom who actually didn't like using the laptops because they were nervous of what they may find, and that's from previous experience. You know, so it's important to teach them that, you know, that will happen. And that's okay.
And I think that's exactly what
this is how we deal with it.
Is to actually teach this will happen. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Because you can't not teach them, you know, how to use it and how to navigate that, because it's part of our lives now, you know. I mean, you know, some of us would have grown up where, you know, you didn't even have a mobile phone, you know, and, you know, so you've got to look at how technology has evolved so quickly for them in such a short space of time, but not not teaching them actually how to use it safely
Yeah.
is actually probably, or you mentioned duty of care, you know, so there is that element there. Let's teach them how to use it. Let's teach them what is right and what is wrong about all of this.
And it's the mixed messages that we give young people all the
Absolutely.
time. So for example, we actively encourage curiosity. We want them to be nosy and to root out information and to look and search and analyse. But when they do that online, we can suddenly take a different perspective on it. At second level, we would have real concerns around young people accessing pornography, how that's managed, being able to understand and process what they see. For much younger students, maybe in primary school, whether it's accidentally accessing inappropriate content, can be really traumatic for them.
Or things that are sent to them, you know,
Yes.
that are targeted and sent to them because whoever, you know, an older brother or an older, you know, sister, an older child knows it's going to make them uncomfortable, or knows, you know, maybe, you know, they'll get in trouble if they have this on their phone, or, you know, that happens quite often, and you know, certainly it is something that you need to address. And I think that issue of cyberbullying, you know, it's a type of bullying that we never had to deal with. Myself, maybe as a teenager, it started at that stage, but I was maybe 15, 16, 17 at the time that kind of really started to come to the fore. And the thing about cyberbullying is, as I used to say to the children that I teach, or their parents, when you would be talking to them, is they never get a break from the bully. Home used to be a break, but when that person can access you on your phone, they are with you 24/7. It is a much more intense kind of bullying than we would have ever experienced.
And that's probably a really good point as well, that the phone is, that there is a phone box in the kitchen or in somewhere in the house, and they're not in the bedroom.
It's not in the bedroom.
You know, and that's the phone, or that's the iPad or whatever tablet they might have, that they don't have like that access to it all the time.
Yeah.
Because like I would teach relationships and sexuality in school to the seniors, you know, and again, even they would not often be aware of, you know, the content or the inappropriate images when you're talking about pornography that they might have been sent, you know. So like making them aware of all of this, because sometimes we might assume that they're digital natives, but actually they're not. You know, they're able to work a device and search something, but are they actually able to decipher the information that they're getting through and to filter it? Often they're not actually. And there's a big role to be played. And I think, you know, in this activity here, a lot of it is about your data, and a lot of it is about, you know, not sharing or being careful about what you're sharing. And there's a really good video clip there. It's about the pizza and ordering the pizza, and actually what the pizza had about you, the information they have about you. Because younger one, like when you're talking about the 10, 11-year-olds, often if they're on an app or they're playing a game or something like that, a request will come up for their email address. And often at that age they will know their email address and they can pop it in. And then that gives them access to another level or to something specific in a game which they want. And you know, you can set that up where you as the parent or the guardian can get a notification that they have done this. Because sometimes they mightn't tell you that because they want to go to the next level. So they might think, well, if I ask you, you say no, and therefore I'll do it myself. You know, so that open communication about it, and it's not the banning of it. I think that can really create that piece where they're not going to communicate with you. But having, you know, saying this is the time, you know, that you have for it, or that there's time in the day where it's not you're not having a screen.
But I think on the summer programme, what's really important is that you're not trying to fix all of this. What you're doing is you're bringing awareness to it, that when you're using devices or you're using access to the internet as part of your research process, and it's a wonderful tool for students with special interests. The internet is an amazing treasure trove of other people who are interested in the same topics, access and detailed information in those topics. And even that in itself can really help the young person to calm, feel relaxed, get into that place where they're in flow, and that idea of being really lost in the moment, a bit like the poster we had up in our last session when we were talking about the idea of keeping busy and finding your calm in that place of being busy. So I think as you navigate the areas around internet usage, be particularly cognizant of any students with additional needs. Think about the cognitive needs, things like a student with dyslexia or dysgraphia or dyscalculia, coordination, spelling, access to information, language. All of that can be an issue. So as Hannah was saying, like for a student with dyslexia, where spelling might really be a challenge, incorrectly typing in something in a search screen can be very, very common.
Yeah.
And then they're suddenly in a loop where they didn't expect to find themselves. For a student who's very literal in their experience of their world and the ability to hypothesize or imagine situations in a different context, internet access can be very challenging for them, because when they read comments or feedback or notes or messages from other people, they can be very mixed. They can be abbreviated, they can have a combination of written form, emojis, and what does that emoji mean, and trying to decipher all of that information from peers can be really, really particularly challenging for the autistic young person. So it's a wonderful opportunity to look at exploring scripts. What do I say to somebody if I don't understand what I've just accessed? How do I ask for more information? And actually maybe doing a little bit of role play around that. Imagine you came across something online that you weren't happy with, or you accidentally clicked into a pop-up that was inappropriate. Who would you tell and what would you say?
Yeah.
Let's practice that out now. And actually giving a sense of ownership of the language to help them navigate out of the situations where they might find themselves in. We all have found ourselves in those situations where, how did I get down this rabbit hole online, and how do I get out of it?
Yeah.
But helping young people navigate that so that they're, as Hannah was saying, not afraid, and that we're aligning ourselves with them to navigate the problem, not being seen as the kind of the punitive force around that.
And just particularly for younger children, you know, if you have kind of, you know, 6, 7, 8-year-olds even that are accessing the internet, actually knowing what is inappropriate, or how do I know if what I'm seeing is making me uncomfortable, you know, kind of identifying those inner feelings, because they may come across something that they can't process, they don't understand what they're seeing, but those kind of inner feelings that they have, you know, if it gives them a pain in their tummy, or it makes them feel worried, or it makes them feel nervous, or they just don't like it, if you have any of those feelings, that's when you go and you tell an adult, you know, because they really may not be, and they might not be able to tell you what they saw, because they mightn't have the language to tell you what they saw. But if you can teach them that if you look at something and it makes you feel this way, then you come and tell, you really simplify it. You look at something, you feel this way, you come and tell an adult. 3 steps.
Excellent, really, really good.
Yeah.
So again, enjoy the use of the internet, access it appropriately, but basically make sure that we're always taking every single moment we can to use it as a learning opportunity, and to be very cognizant of the particular targeted, identified needs of the young people that you are supporting, and making sure you're building that into their ability to navigate access to the internet.
And I suppose, considering we have a lot, like in all of the activities we've done, we've given a research piece. So, you know, it might be an idea to do this at the beginning, so that at least you have it as that learning tool right throughout all the other activities, actually. You know, rather than maybe coming to it at the end when you've actually gone through the research process with all of the other projects, you know. So this would be something that you could actually weave in throughout the weeks, actually, to actually allow the student to actually experience it as well.
So thank you very much, and we'll be back with you to do our next section.